In a remote corner of Africa, where hot winds lift clouds of ochre dust, lay a small village named Zangara. This village, nestled between arid hills and dusty plains, lived in rhythm with the whims of capricious nature. When rains fell, they brought the earth to life in a burst of greenery and vitality. But most of the time, the relentless sun ruled, scorching the ground and forcing the villagers to ration their water supplies carefully. The people of Zangara were survivors. They had learned to live with little, adapting to their harsh environment through ingenuity and solidarity. Every family contributed to the community's life. Women wove mats and prepared meals, men cultivated barren fields or repaired mud houses, and children played in the dust, inventing simple yet joyful games. It was in this challenging yet warm setting that Amina, the girl with the golden heart, was born. However, her birth was not celebrated with songs or dances. No, Amina came into the world in silence and darkness, under a makeshift tent on the outskirts of the village. Her mother, a woman with a tumultuous past, gave birth alone, her heart heavy with the weight of decisions she had to make. This woman, whose name had been erased by the collective memory of the village, had lived a life marked by poverty and exclusion. Forced into prostitution out of necessity, she carried a pain that no one took the time to understand. Before we continue, I will appreciate to know from where you are watching this video. Feel free to share it. Amina was only a few hours old when she was left on the dusty steps of the Sisters of Mercy orphanage. Her mother, her eyes veiled with tears and bitterness, wrapped the newborn in a worn cloth before disappearing into the night, her heart heavy with the loss of a part of herself. She knew she could offer her child only a life of wandering and suffering, and with a final act of hope, she entrusted Amina to those she believed could give her a chance at survival. The Sisters of Mercy, women devoted to serving the most vulnerable, found the baby on their doorstep at dawn. Her piercing cries, mingled with the distant crow of a rooster, drew their attention. Sister Maria knelt to pick up the child. Her hands revealed a frail body and a face already marked by pain. But what caught her eye immediately was the unusual curvature of the baby's back. Amina was born with a physical deformity, a trait that, though harmless to her health, would make her a target of curiosity and rejection. The orphanage, a modest building surrounded by a parched garden, was already overcrowded. The sisters struggled to meet the needs of dozens of children abandoned by families devastated by poverty or conflict. Despite this, they welcomed Amina with tenderness that contrasted with the harshness of their daily lives. They gave her a name meaning truth and fidelity, hoping it would carry the promise of a better future. However, life at the orphanage was not easy for a child like Amina. Her physical difference, though minor, quickly drew curious or disdainful glances. The other children, often themselves scarred by trauma, found in her an easy target for their teasing. The adults, overwhelmed by the number of souls to feed and raise, rarely noticed Amina's silent tears in the dark corners of the dormitory. Thus, from birth, Amina faced a brutal and indifferent reality. Yet, beneath the judging looks and whispers, something stronger was growing within her, a flame of resilience. Even in her moments of solitude, Amina observed the world with an insatiable curiosity, as if already seeking a way to transcend the trials ahead. From her arrival at the orphanage, Amina understood that her difference placed her in a position of vulnerability she had never known. Her features, her gestures, even her gaze seemed to disturb others, like an oddity in a world already marked by pain and loss. The children, often themselves broken by shattered lives, instinctively sought an outlet for their own suffering. They turned to Amina, more fragile, more solitary, as an easy target. Thus, she quickly became the victim of cruel teasing and muffled laughter in the orphanage's dark corridors. The mistreatment she endured was sometimes subtle, hidden under smiles or gestures of contempt. But its impact was deep and constant. Every day, Amina lived in the shadow of these small, invisible violences: a cutting word, a mockery thrown in passing, a sudden gesture. These silent aggressions accumulated within her, feeding her isolation. She felt invisible, like a shadow among others, forgotten by adults who, too, seemed caught in a whirlwind of tasks and responsibilities. The orphanage was overcrowded, underfunded, and the caregiver's attention was too often diverted by the urgency of daily life. No one noticed the hidden tears in the dark corners of her nights, nor the invisible scars left by the other children's cruelties. Yet, at the heart of this suffering, Amina possessed a silent strength, an inner light that nothing seemed able to extinguish. She could see beauty where others saw only emptiness. Her insatiable curiosity about the world was her lifeline, a way to escape, if only for a moment, the bleakness of her existence. Often alone, withdrawn into herself in a corner of the orphanage, Amina immersed herself in meticulous observation of her environment. The debris strewn on the ground, the abandoned objects, became for her an infinite source of inspiration. A simple rusty tin can, discarded and forgotten, transformed in her mind into a useful container, a potential work in progress. An old, dirty tire became a swing, a space for freedom and daydreaming, where she could imagine a world beyond the orphanage walls. A split piece of wood, picked up randomly, turned into a shelf, a place where she could arrange her few treasures, her thoughts, and her hopes. Through these simple objects, Amina learned to see beyond appearances, to imagine new worlds, and to constantly reinvent herself. In this imposed solitude, Amina created a parallel universe made of salvaged items and transformations. She reinvented her daily life, finding in discarded objects the possibility of a second chance, much like her own journey. She realized that even in the harshest conditions, there was always a way to rebuild, to rewrite one's story. Thus, each piece of abandoned debris became for her not only a means of survival, but also a silent act of resistance against injustice and pain. At the age of 16, Amina faced a reality she had long dreaded. The orphanage could no longer keep her. The rules were strict and immutable. Once reaching adulthood, every young person had to leave the institution to make room for the younger ones who, like her once, needed a roof and a refuge. Amina found herself alone, without family, without protection, in a world she knew too well but was not fully prepared to join. The orphanage, which had once sheltered and protected her, now cast her out, like a book whose last page had been turned. The orphanage door closed behind her, and Amina, disoriented, found herself on the dusty streets of Zangara, a city where the cobblestones seemed to retain the sun's heat, and where empty stomachs and averted gazes were commonplace. She had only her scant clothing and childhood memories to defend herself against the cold of the streets. She first sought refuge under trees, finding a bit of shade and solace in the coolness of the few green corners the city still offered. At night, she slept on worn pieces of cardboard, at the mercy of the weather and insecurity. Each morning, her stomach crying out in hunger, she roamed the streets, stopping here and there to scavenge leftover food from the market vendors. Often, she made do with what she could find: an overly ripe apple, a hardened piece of bread, vegetables no longer valuable to the merchants, but treasures for her. Yet, even in such dire conditions, Amina refused to let herself be consumed by misery. She knew that giving in to despair would mean total defeat. She had learned too much over the years to let suffering engulf her without resistance. Each dawn, Amina wandered through foul-smelling alleys, scavenging open dumps where garbage lay covered in dust and time. But instead of being crushed by this accumulation of filth and neglect, she saw opportunities. Every object, every abandoned piece of debris became for her a chance to create something new, to reinvent her environment, to find meaning in the harshness of her existence. She began collecting anything she could find: broken shards of glass, scraps of metal, old plastics, and pieces of fabric. With patience and skill, Amina transformed these discarded materials into useful and ingenious items. She crafted rudimentary water filters using sand and charcoal to purify river water. She made oil lamps from broken bottles, filling them with salvaged oil and using simple wicks to light her lonely nights. But she didn't stop at meeting her personal needs. Aware of the poverty surrounding her, she began making toys for neighborhood children. Simple yet creative toys. Dolls made of rags, wooden cars she sculpted, and kites fashioned from fabric scraps and bamboo brought moments of joy and distraction to children who, like her, had grown up in the shadows. Gradually, Amina became a respected and well-known figure in the neighborhoods where she roamed. People greeted her, recognizing not only the strength of someone who survives, but also the spirit of someone who transforms suffering into something creative and beautiful. She no longer had a house, but she had found a way to create a home, a space where her actions and ideas could flourish, even in the face of adversity. Amina had learned to survive and to invent a world where she could fully exist, even if the outside world often seemed intent on erasing her. At first, the villagers only noticed Amina's appearance. They saw her as a beggar, a poor soul wandering aimlessly, or worse, a madwoman with a deranged mind. Their gazes were often tinged with mistrust, even judgment. Her hands, blackened by her work with salvaged materials, her worn and torn clothes, and her distracted air, focused on her creations rather than her surroundings, only reinforced this impression. She was just another silhouette in the crowd, an unknown face in the market, a strange figure with unpredictable movements. But Amina did not give up. Deep inside, she knew her worth was beyond what others could see. Slowly, her creations began to attract attention. It wasn't just their utility that caught people's eyes, but also the unexpected beauty of the objects she made. Each item she crafted, whether it was a hand-woven basket or a makeshift tool, bore her unique signature, a story, and a particular care. Her patience and creative vision transformed rejected materials into one-of-a-kind pieces, full of character. One day, a woman, captivated by the ingenuity and aesthetics of a basket holder Amina had crafted, offered to buy it. This marked a pivotal moment for Amina. For the first time, someone recognized the value of her work, and a financial transaction materialized. Later, a man approached her with a specific request. He needed a rat trap to deal with pests in his attic. This was a new challenge that Amina rose to brilliantly. The trap she designed was not only functional but also clever and durable, a testament to her inventiveness. gradually orders began to pour in. The villagers, who initially viewed her as an odd presence, started to see her as a skilled artisan, a creator capable of solving their everyday problems with her handmade objects. The initial earnings from her creations were modest, but opened the door to a dream she had long harbored, correcting her physical deformity. She had always felt the weight of this imperfection, an invisible burden that affected her confidence. But the thought of surgery seemed like a distant dream, a luxury beyond her reach. However, with the money she began to save, she dared to take the leap. She embarked on a long journey to a neighboring town, where a doctor, initially hesitant, agreed to help her. In exchange for a modest sum she had painstakingly accumulated, the surgery was scheduled. After weeks of waiting, the procedure took place. It was a delicate moment, a turning point filled with hope and silent fear. But against all odds, the surgery was a success. When Amina returned to the village, the transformation was striking. Not only had her physical appearance changed, but so had her posture. Her features, while still carrying her uniqueness, now exuded a newfound harmony and clarity. The villagers, who had watched her evolve over the years, were astonished. But it wasn't just her outward appearance that had changed. Her entire being had undergone a metamorphosis. The confidence she now radiated shone brightly, like the noonday sun, vivid and unshakable. She was no longer the same Amina, but a young woman brimming with self-assurance, fully aware of who she was and what she had to offer the world. Her transformation was not just external. It was the reward for years of struggle, perseverance, and hard work. And now, the eyes of others no longer judged her. They recognized her. She was no longer merely a stranger in the village streets, but a respected woman whose story inspired and whose journey had become a model of courage and hope. Once transformed, both physically and morally, Amina did not forget where she came from. The pains of her childhood and the suffering she had endured remained etched in her mind. These memories of solitude, rejection, and struggle stayed with her daily, but rather than letting them consume her, she chose to turn them into a life mission. Deep down, she knew that suffering, no matter how intense, should not be an end but a starting point for something greater. With her steadily growing income, she managed to rent a small house in the village, a modest yet warm place that she turned into a refuge for orphans. It wasn't just a place where they could rest, but a sanctuary of comfort, learning, and creation. Amina, who had herself experienced isolation and precarity, wanted to offer these children what she had never had, a chance to grow, learn, and dream. She began by teaching them basic reading and writing skills, but beyond that, she provided a different kind of education, one that awakened their creative spirits and helped them discover themselves. In the small workshop she had set up in a corner of the house, she showed them how to transform abandoned objects into useful tools, toys, or even works of art. A piece of wood became a sculpture, an old scrap of fabric turned into a bag or a doll. Amina taught them that nothing was ever truly lost, that everything, no matter how insignificant, could have a second life if approached with heart and imagination. She also instilled values close to her heart: perseverance, kindness, and above all, the importance of believing in oneself. It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is what you choose to become. she often told them. These children, often overlooked by society, now had someone who believed in them. The residents of Zangara, who had once looked at her with indifference or even scorn, began to see Amina in a new light. They noticed not just her courage, but also the generosity and kindness she gave freely, without expecting anything in return. The village began to transform slowly, as if Amina's example brought a fresh breath of hope. Gradually, men and women from the village started volunteering to help with her mission. Some brought materials, others offered their time or skills. Together, they built what would become a fully fledged orphanage, a place where children could grow, not only in a safe environment, but also in one that nurtured their souls and minds. The building, initially modest, slowly expanded. Spacious dormitories were set up, allowing each child to sleep in a clean bed in a calm environment. A library was installed, filled with books collected by volunteers from the village, offering children access to culture and knowledge. In one corner of the house, a large creative workshop was established, where children could freely express their imagination while learning manual skills. It became a place of transformation, not only for objects but for the lives of the children who entered. Amina had not only created a shelter for orphans, she had built a true haven of peace and growth, a place where every child could discover their potential, learn to dream, and, most importantly, believe in the future. As she watched them grow and flourish, she knew her mission was being fulfilled. She was giving them what she had always sought for herself, a chance to rebuild, to reinvent, and to rise above past hardships. The years passed slowly, but Amina's work only continued to grow. She had become much more than just a figure in the village. She was a source of inspiration, a pillar upon which many leaned. Her reputation had crossed the borders of Zangara, and her orphanage, which she had shaped with such dedication, now welcomed children from across the region. These children, whom she had rescued from the streets or abandonment, grew under her watchful and caring eye in an environment that was safe, educational, and creative. They learned to turn their pain into strength and their loneliness into solidarity. Amina had given them far more than a roof over their heads. She had offered them a future, a chance to become the architects of their own lives. But Amina had never been content to remain fixed in her role as a caregiver and protector. The spirit of innovation that had always driven her remained alive. Every day, she sought new ways to improve the lives of her village's residents. Her creations extended beyond objects. She devised systems to collect rainwater, addressing the village's water supply issues. She also developed solar ovens, enabling families to cook without relying on wood or charcoal, thus reducing deforestation and easing their daily struggles. Each invention was a response to the villagers' everyday challenges, a testament to resilience and creativity in the face of hardship. One evening, as the colors of dusk gently enveloped the valley, Amina climbed the hill overlooking the village, as she sometimes did, to take in the landscape. The sun, glowing orange and gold, seemed to melt into the earth, bathing the entire village in a soothing light. It was a moment of calm, a suspended instant where she could finally let her mind rest, away from daily worries. But that evening, as she lost herself in the contemplation of the sky, a young boy approached her. He was one of the children she had taken in from the streets, one she had saved from the indifference of the world. He had grown up under her roof, yet his eyes still sparkled with a thirst to understand and explore the world. "Mother Amina," he said as he approached her, "how did you learn to see beauty where everyone else sees waste?" The question, simple on the surface, struck Amina deeply. She turned her head toward him, and a gentle smile spread across her lips. She placed a protective and affectionate hand on the boy's head, as she often did when he was much younger. Her fingers slid through his hair, warmed by the sunlight, and she replied, her voice filled with tenderness. "Beauty is everywhere, my child," she said softly. "You just have to open your heart to see it." These were not mere words for Amina, but a truth she had lived through her own experiences. Throughout her life, she had learned to see the hidden potential in things others discarded. Every piece of wood, every rusty metal scrap, every worn-out fabric held the possibility of transformation, not just into objects, but into symbols of renewal. To Amina, beauty lay in the ability to see beyond the surface, to understand that every difficulty could be an opportunity to grow, learn, and find new hope. In those quiet moments, with the evening light gently warming the world, Amina knew her legacy extended far beyond her inventions or her orphanage. Her true heritage was in the ability she had given so many, the power to see beauty where none was expected, the faith in a better world even when it seemed broken. And in that precise moment, seeing the spark in the boy's eyes, she knew she had fulfilled her mission. Her vision of the world had been passed on, and the chain of hope and beauty continued to weave itself, stronger than ever. Amina's story did not remain confined to the borders of Zangara. Her name, first whispered among the villagers, gradually spread like a rumor carried by the wind. Over the years, travelers, journalists, and volunteers came from afar, fascinated by this woman with a heart of gold, driven by an unwavering love for children and a fierce determination to transform suffering into hope. They wanted to meet the person behind the incredible story of resilience and solidarity. And at every encounter, Amina welcomed these curious souls with the same gentleness and wisdom that had guided her throughout her life. Her name became synonymous with hope and perseverance throughout the region and far beyond. Increasingly, people felt inspired by her journey, how a young orphan, rejected and mistreated, managed to rise, not just to save herself, but to save an entire generation of children. Her life became a model, a living symbol of the power of redemption and transformation. The children she had saved and educated grew into accomplished adults. Some became teachers, passing on the knowledge and values Amina had instilled in them. Others pursued trades, becoming artisans, inventors, or architects shaping the future of Zangara. Some even became community leaders, taking up the torch of transformation that their mentor had entrusted to them. Everywhere, in the village and beyond, traces of Amina's legacy were visible. In every street corner, every enterprise, every act of collective action. All who had crossed her path carried a part of Amina's spirit, that of an abandoned child who became a light for others, a beacon in the darkness of suffering. What do you think about the story of Amina? Please leave a comment, like, and share the video. Register to your favorite channel. You will then be informed of any new inspiring and passionate story. See you soon.